The great galactic arena stood at the center of a massive space station, surrounded by the glow of distant stars. It was a place of legends, where warriors from across the galaxy gathered to test their strength, honor, and courage. Thousands of beings of every color and shape filled the seats, their cheers echoing like thunder. Every eye was fixed on the shining floor below, waiting for the next battle to begin. It was not just a tournament. It was the trial of strength, an ancient event where only the bravest could compete. The winner would not only earn glory but also bring pride to their entire species. Every year countless warriors came, but this year was different. Among the armored beasts, glowing giants, and metal-skinned fighters there stood one being who seemed completely out of place. He was human. His name was Captain Ryan Holt, a soldier from Earth. He wore no armor, no helmet, no shining weapon. His hands were bare, his uniform plain, and his expression calm. Around him other competitors laughed or whispered. Some pointed and joked. To them he looked weak, fragile compared to the monstrous fighters around him. "What is that creature?" A scaled alien hissed. "Human," another replied with a sneer. "Soft skin, no claws, no fangs." "He won't last a minute," Ryan ignored them. He closed his eyes and took a slow breath. The hum of the arena, the noise of the crowd, and the distant roar of machinery, it all faded away in his mind. He had fought in real wars before, on distant colonies where every mistake meant death. Compared to that, this was just another test. In the royal box above, Princess Lyra of the Lyrians sat watching. She was tall and graceful, her silver eyes glowing softly under the crystal lights. Her people were known for their wisdom and beauty. The Lyrians ruled several star systems, and Lyra was both a leader and a symbol of peace among her kind. Her court advisors surrounded her, dressed in robes of white and blue. One of them, Kale, leaned close and whispered, "Your Highness, the human looks weak. He cannot possibly survive this round. Perhaps we should not waste our attention on such creatures." Lyra did not answer immediately. Her gaze remained fixed on Ryan. She studied his stillness, the way he stood straight and calm without fear or pride. There was something different about him. She could not explain it, but she felt it. He did not seem nervous, nor did he seem proud. He simply waited like someone who already knew what must be done. "The match begins soon," Kyle reminded. Lyra nodded slowly. "Let us see what makes the human so confident," she said softly. The ground below began to shift. Metal plates opened, and from the opposite side a massive creature stepped into the arena. It was a Drax, a being of stone and muscle, standing over 3 meters tall. Its body was covered in armor-like scales, and its eyes burned with red fire. The Drax raised its hammer-shaped fists and roared, shaking the ground. The crowd cheered wildly. The Drax Dominion was famous for their strength. They were undefeated in physical combat. Many in the audience believed this fight would end in seconds. Ryan looked up at the towering creature. He didn't move. The announcer's voice boomed across the arena. "Combatants ready. The match begins in 3, 2, 1. The gong rang. The Drax charged. Each step was like a quake. The ground cracked beneath its feet. Dust rose around its body as it swung a massive arm toward Ryan, aiming to crush him instantly. The crowd gasped, expecting the human to be flattened. But Ryan was already moving. He stepped sideways with speed so smooth it seemed effortless. The Drax's strike hit the ground, sending shards of rock flying. Before it could lift its arm again, Ryan moved closer. So close that his small frame looked like a shadow under the giant. Then with perfect timing, he struck once. His right fist hit the Drax's throat joint, the one weak spot between its stone plates. There was a deep sound like a drum being struck. The giant staggered backward, eyes wide, choking. Before anyone could understand what happened, Ryan twisted, grabbed its wrist, and used its weight to throw the enormous body over his shoulder. The Drax crashed onto the ground with a sound like thunder. The entire arena fell silent. Even the announcer froze for a moment before stammering, "The Drax has fallen." For a few seconds, no one moved. Then slowly, the Drax tried to rise, but its body trembled and collapsed again. Its neck joint had been shattered by the single human strike. The fight was over. The crowd exploded with noise. Some shouted in disbelief, others in amazement. Cameras zoomed in on Ryan as he stood over the fallen creature, breathing steadily. His fists were bruised, but his expression remained calm. In the royal box, Lyra's silver eyes widened slightly. She had seen many warriors fight before. Most fought with rage or pride. But this human, he fought with precision. Every move was measured, every strike placed with purpose. There was no hatred in his eyes, only focus. Kale whispered again, "How could a creature of flesh defeat a Drax?" "Impossible." Lyra shook her head slowly. "Not impossible, just different." She leaned forward, her gaze locked on Ryan as he bowed briefly to the fallen Drax and then to the crowd. He didn't raise his arms in victory or shout. He simply turned and began walking out of the arena, as if the match had meant nothing. Lyra felt a strange warmth in her chest. She didn't understand why. Her heart beat faster, and a soft whisper escaped her lips, words she didn't mean to say aloud. "He fights without fear." With only his hands, Kale heard her and blinked. "Princess?" She turned away quickly. "Nothing," she said quietly. "Just thinking." As Ryan left the arena floor, reporters and drones followed him, flashing lights and asking questions. "Captain Holt, how did you defeat a Drax with your bare hands?" He only replied, "By understanding the fight before it began." When someone asked, "Were you not afraid?" He paused and said softly, "Fear is natural. But letting it control you, that's a choice." Those words spread across the arena screens, and many who had mocked the human before now looked at him differently. Some with respect, some with unease. In her private box, Lyra continued to watch him until he disappeared from sight. She felt her thoughts drifting, not as a princess, but as someone who had just seen something extraordinary. There was a strength in him that went beyond muscles or weapons. It was something invisible, something powerful. That night, long after the arena had gone quiet, Lyra found herself replaying the match on her holographic screen. She watched every movement, slowing it down frame by frame. The way Ryan moved, the way he waited, the calm in his eyes. He was not just fighting an enemy. He was studying, adapting, surviving. Her people, the Lyrians, believed that emotion weakened warriors. They trained to be calm and detached. But this human's calm was different. It wasn't cold. It was alive, filled with purpose. Lyra whispered to herself, "So this is what they mean by human will." Outside, the lights of the arena dimmed as the next battles ended. But one name now echoed through the stars. Ryan Holt of Earth, the human who fought barehanded and won. And far above, among the royal towers, a princess with silver eyes could not forget him. Something in her heart had awakened, a mix of wonder, curiosity, and something she could not yet name. For the first time in her life, she felt drawn not to power or wisdom, but to a simple, human fire that burned quietly within one man. She looked out at the stars and whispered softly, "Who are you, human?" And though he could not hear her, Ryan Holt, alone in his small chamber, looked up at the same stars and smiled. He had no idea that his battle had already changed something far greater than the arena. It had changed a heart. The night after the great battle, the city around the Arena of Worlds glittered like a sea of stars. Ships drifted through the air like silver birds, lights reflecting off the tall crystal towers of the Lyrian capital. Every screen across the galaxy replayed the same moment, the human single strike that had defeated the mighty Drax. Commentators spoke in disbelief. Never before has a Drax fallen to an unarmed fighter. Who is this human? What secret power does he hold? And while the galaxy argued and wondered, Captain Ryan Holt sat alone in his small quarters deep inside the arena complex. The walls were cold metal, the lights dim. He leaned back in his chair, his hands wrapped in white bandages. Each knuckle ached, but he didn't complain. Pain was something he understood. It reminded him that he was alive. On the table before him lay a small hollow image of Earth, the blue planet that looked so tiny compared to the stars. He stared at it quietly. "You'd laugh if you saw this, Mom," he said softly. "Me fighting monsters with my bare hands." He smiled faintly, though his eyes looked tired. To him, it wasn't about fame or glory. He fought because he represented something bigger, a reminder that even a small, fragile species could stand tall among giants. In the royal palace above the city, Princess Lyra could not sleep. The image of the human, calm, focused, unshaken, kept replaying in her mind. She had seen many warriors before, but none like him, Her people's soldiers were strong, yes, but they fought with strategy and technology. The human had fought with spirit, a spirit that refused to break. She sat near the balcony, her silver gown shining softly under the moonlight of Lyra Prime. The night wind brushed her hair as she stared at the stars. Behind her, her advisor, Kyle, approached. "Your Highness," he said carefully, "you have been watching the humans match again, haven't you?" Lyra smiled faintly without turning. "It was worth watching," Kyle frowned. "With respect, Princess, he is dangerous. Humans are unpredictable. Their emotions control them. It is said they can be kind one moment and violent the next." Lyra turned her head, her expression calm. "Or perhaps they simply feel more deeply than others." Kale bowed slightly but said nothing more. He could tell his princess's interest was not fading. When he left, Lyra opened her wrist console and accessed the secure communication line of the tournament. After a moment of hesitation, she sent a private message. "Captain Ryan Holt, I wish to meet you." Lyra, Princess of Lyra. She closed the screen and breathed slowly. "Let's see what truth lies behind those calm eyes," she murmured. The next day, when Ryan was resting after his morning training, his communicator blinked with a royal symbol. He frowned slightly, reading the message. "Princess Lyra wants to meet me," he said aloud, half to himself. The guard who had delivered the message nodded stiffly. "You are to come to the royal pavilion at sunset. Please be respectful," Ryan chuckled. "Respectful, huh? I'll do my best." He cleaned up, put on his standard Earth Alliance uniform, and walked toward the shining transport platform that carried visitors up to the royal palace. The platform rose slowly through the air, giving him a clear view of the city. Endless towers glowing gold and blue, floating bridges connecting them like threads of light. When he reached the palace, he was led through tall halls lined with silver mirrors and glowing walls. Everything around him seemed built for beauty and peace. Yet Ryan could feel the tension in the air. Guards watched him closely, hands near their weapons. Finally, the tall doors of the royal garden opened, and he stepped inside. The garden was breathtaking, full of plants that shimmered softly, their leaves glowing with faint light. In the center stood Princess Lyra, dressed in a flowing gown of blue crystal fabric. She turned when she heard his footsteps. "Captain Holt," she greeted with a calm voice. "Thank you for accepting my request." Ryan bowed slightly. "Your Highness." For a few moments, neither spoke. The gentle sound of the fountain filled the air. Then Lyra smiled faintly. "You surprised the entire galaxy yesterday," she said. "A single strike to defeat a Drax. Tell me, how did you do it?" Ryan thought for a second. "Observation," he said simply. "Every living thing has a weakness. You just have to see it before they see yours." Lyra raised an eyebrow. "You speak like a philosopher, not a soldier," he smiled. "I've had time to think. Or does that to you?" Something in his eyes made her pause. There was no arrogance, only quiet truth. She realized this human had seen real loss, the kind that shapes a person forever. "Do humans always fight with such belief?" she asked softly. Ryan looked up at the sky. "We fight because we have to. We don't have claws or armor. All we have is heart. So when everything else fails, we keep standing." Lyra's silver eyes studied him closely. "That is powerful," she said quietly. "Most species fight for pride or power. You fight to survive," Ryan nodded, "and to protect what matters." That answer stayed with her longer than she expected. Over the next few days, Lyra invited him again and again, sometimes to talk about strategy, sometimes just to walk through the gardens. They spoke about Earth, its oceans, mountains, and skies. Ryan told her about human music, laughter, and art. She listened like a student learning about a forgotten world. "Your world sounds so alive," she said once. "We have beauty here, but it feels perfect, too perfect," Ryan chuckled. "Perfect things don't grow, Princess. They just stay the same." Lyra smiled. "You speak like my old teachers. But somehow you make the words sound true." The more they spoke, the more she understood that humans were different, not just in strength, but in spirit. They broke yet rebuilt. They fell yet stood again. She watched him train one afternoon in the empty arena. His movements were sharp and disciplined. Sweat ran down his face as he practiced strikes and blocks again and again. There was no audience now, no cameras, only focus. Lyra watched quietly from the shadows. Something stirred within her. It was not just admiration. It was connection, a feeling she had never known. "Why do I feel this?" she whispered to herself. "He is so human, and yet..." Her heart answered before her mind could stop it. I want him to be mine. The words came out soft, like a secret carried by the wind. That night, as the city lights glowed below, Lyra stood at her window again. She replayed every moment in her head, his calm tone, his quiet smile, the way he spoke of hope even after pain. Kyle entered again, concern on his face. Your Highness, you have met the human several times now. The Council may question your intentions. I do not fear their questions, she replied softly. Still, Kyle said, this human is unlike us. His emotions may mislead you. They say humans are too attached to their feelings. Lyra turned sharply, her silver eyes bright. And maybe that is their strength. Maybe that is why he could stand against the Drax when no one else could. Kyle lowered his head. As you wish, Princess. But be careful. After he left, Lyra whispered to herself. Careful. Yes, but not afraid. Meanwhile, Ryan lay awake in his quarters staring at the ceiling. The meetings with Lyra had surprised him. He had met politicians, generals, and commanders before, but never someone like her. She listened. She cared. She reminds me of home, he muttered. Strange. A princess who sees beyond titles. He turned on his side, his mind replaying her words and her curious smile. He knew this was dangerous, in a human soldier getting close to an alien royal. But something about her made him feel seen for who he truly was. Not a weapon, not a legend, just a man. Outside, the stars above Lyra shone brighter than ever, as if watching over two souls who had just begun to understand each other. Two beings from different worlds, bound by curiosity and courage, and somewhere in the night, Princess Lyra stood on her balcony and whispered again into the wind. I want him to be mine, not to possess but to understand. She did not yet know that her whisper would soon start a chain of events that would change the fate of the galaxy itself. The arena of worlds had grown silent again, but whispers about the human still traveled across the galaxy. On every planet where people gathered, someone spoke of the man who had defeated a Drax with his bare hands. The story had become a symbol, a reminder that courage did not depend on strength or weapons. But for Princess Lyra, it was more than a story. It was a feeling she could not name. Every day, she found reasons to see Captain Ryan Holt, sometimes to ask about his next match, sometimes just to talk about the strange and fascinating world called Earth. She often told herself it was simple curiosity. Yet every time she saw him, her heart felt a little lighter. Ryan was preparing for his next match when Lyra entered the training hall. He turned, surprised. Your Highness, he greeted, wiping sweat from his brow. Lyra smiled. You always call me that, she said. Can you not call me Lyra when we're alone? He hesitated, then nodded. If that is your wish. Lyra. She smiled again. Better. Ryan set his gloves aside. You shouldn't be here. The arena isn't safe during practice. She walked closer, unbothered. You are not fighting now, she said. And I've seen enough of your fights to know you won't hurt me. Ryan looked at her with a hint of amusement. You trust easily. No, she said softly, meeting his eyes. Only when it feels right. For a moment, neither spoke. There was a quiet warmth between them, unspoken, fragile but real. Then Lyra broke the silence. I have a question, she said. When you fight, I see no anger in your eyes, only focus. Why? Ryan thought for a moment. Because anger clouds judgment, he said. A soldier who fights with hate forgets what he's fighting for. Lyra nodded slowly. Then what do you fight for? He looked down at his hands. For those who can't. For peace. For survival. For hope. Those words touched her deeply. To most warriors, victory was about glory or pride. But this human fought for something higher, something she felt her people had forgotten long ago. Later that day, Lyra invited him to the royal gardens again. This time there were no guards nearby, no advisors watching. The garden was silent, except for the soft hum of glowing plants and the sound of the small waterfall nearby. Lyra walked, ahead, her silver gown brushing lightly against the crystal grass. Ryan followed a few steps behind, feeling oddly at peace in this alien world. Tell me about Earth, she said, turning slightly. You speak of oceans and forests, but I want to know what it feels like to be there." Ryan smiled gently. "It feels alive. You can smell rain before it falls. You can hear the wind moving through trees. And when the sun rises, it paints the sky with colors no machine could ever copy." Lyra closed her eyes, imagining it. "Your world sounds full of emotion," she said. He nodded. "It is. We're a race of emotions, Princess. That's both our strength and our weakness." She looked at him again, her voice soft. "I think it's your greatest strength." Ryan chuckled quietly. "You're too kind." "I'm honest," she said. "You showed me what willpower looks like. When you fought that Drax, you didn't win because of power. You won because you refused to give up." He looked into her glowing silver eyes and replied, "Maybe. Or maybe I just got lucky." Lyra shook her head. "No. That was not luck. That was something else." As days passed, the bond between them grew. They spoke of everything: duty, loss, dreams, and even fear. Lyra began to see that under Ryan's calmness lay a quiet sadness. One evening, when the sky above Lyra turned golden, she finally asked him, "You've seen war, haven't you?" Ryan's expression changed. He nodded slowly. "Too many times." "Did you lose people?" He didn't answer immediately. Then he said, "Yes, friends, brothers, people who believed in me." Lyra felt her chest tighten. "I'm sorry." He gave a small smile. "You don't need to be. They knew the risks. We fought for something worth dying for." "Peace?" she asked. He nodded. "And freedom." She turned away, thinking deeply. Her people lived in comfort, guided by tradition and safety. But this human, this fragile creature, had faced chaos and still carried hope. She whispered almost to herself, "Humans truly are different." The next day was another match. This time, Ryan faced 3 fighters from the Vex Coalition, each equipped with energy blades. The crowd expected him to lose, but Lyra, sitting in the royal box, felt no fear. She had seen that look in his eyes before, calm, unshaken, alive. When the match began, the Vex fighters circled him like wolves. One struck from behind, another from the side. Ryan ducked, dodged, and blocked with impossible timing. His fists struck fast, every hit finding a weak point. The crowd roared as 2 Vex fell, their armor sparking. The third swung wildly, but Ryan sidestepped and disarmed him with a smooth twist. Within minutes, the battle was over. The arena thundered with cheers. Ryan stood in the center, chest rising and falling with deep breaths. He didn't raise his arms or celebrate. He simply bowed to his fallen opponents. Lyra stood slowly in her box, clapping softly. Her advisors watched her in shock, but she didn't care. When Ryan looked up, their eyes met across the distance, human and Lyrian, warrior and princess. The crowd faded away for both of them. For that single heartbeat, it felt as though they were the only 2 souls in the galaxy. Lyra felt a warmth rise in her chest. Her lips moved without thought, whispering again, "I want him to be mine." This time she understood the meaning. She didn't want to own him. She wanted to understand him, to stand beside him, to learn what gave humans such unbreakable hearts. That night, after the battle, Ryan was summoned to the royal garden once more. He arrived quietly, still wearing the marks of the fight. Lyra was waiting by the glowing pool, her reflection rippling across the water. "You fought beautifully today," she said. Ryan smiled tiredly. "Thank you, though I'm starting to feel every bruise." She laughed softly. "Even legends feel pain, it seems." "I'm no legend," he said, "just a man doing his best." "That's what makes you different," she said, stepping closer. "You don't see yourself as great, but you make others believe they can be." Ryan looked at her, unsure what to say. He wasn't used to such words. In war, people praised him for victories, not for his spirit. Yet here was a princess from another world seeing something in him he had never noticed himself. You've changed the way I see strength, Lyra continued. I used to believe strength was about power or control, but now, I see it's about heart. Ryan looked into her glowing eyes. Maybe it's both, he said softly. Heart gives power its meaning. For a long moment they stood in silence, the stars reflecting in the water around them. Lyra finally said, I hope your next match doesn't take you from us. Ryan smiled faintly. If it does, I'll make sure it's worth remembering. She felt a sting of fear at his words. Don't speak like that, she said quickly. You'll win. You always do. Ryan looked up at the stars. Nobody always wins, Princess, but I'll try. The way he said it, quiet but sure, made her heart ache. As he left that night, Lyra remained by the pool. The cool wind brushed her face, but she barely noticed. She felt something she had never felt before, admiration mixed with worry, and something more tender than either. Her world had always been peaceful, predictable, ruled by calm logic. But now, one human had walked into her life like a storm, shaking the stillness of her heart. And far below, in his small chamber, Ryan sat by his window, staring at the twin moons of Lyra. He wondered if he had made a mistake letting the princess get so close. She deserves better than a soldier, he whispered. Yet despite his thoughts, a quiet smile formed on his lips as he remembered her words and her laughter. Two hearts, from two worlds, both trying to understand the other, not knowing that destiny was already weaving them into the same story. And in the still night of Lyra, the stars above shone brighter than ever, as if they too knew that something special had begun, something that neither war nor time could easily break. The peaceful days after the arena battles did not last long. Across the galaxy, a dark shadow had begun to move. The Zarth Empire, a ruthless race of machines, advanced toward Lyra Prime. Their ships blocked out stars as they entered orbit, cold and metallic, unmoved by the cries of the planets below. The Lyrian Council had gathered in emergency. Advisors spoke in rapid tones, their voices full of fear and anger. Their weapons are beyond anything we have. They will destroy our planet if we do not act, one warned. Lyra stood at the center of the chamber, her silver eyes steady. We will not run, she said firmly. We have allies, and we have hope. But Princess, Kale spoke cautiously, hope alone will not defeat them. Our warriors cannot match the Zarth machines. Lyra's gaze shifted to a holographic display of the Arena of Worlds. Ryan's face appeared in her mind. She remembered his calmness, his courage, and the way he had stood when all seemed lost in his battles. We have Ryan Holt, she said quietly, but with certainty. And that makes all the difference. Ryan was training when the alarm sounded. Lights flashed red across the arena complex. The massive siren echoed through every hall and corridor. A voice boomed, Alert! Zarth Empire forces detected in orbit. All civilians evacuate. Military units prepare for defense. Ryan grabbed his combat gear, though he did not need armor for himself. He had learned long ago that sometimes the body was less important than the mind and spirit. Still, the sirens, the chaos, and the distant hum of approaching machines reminded him that this was not a simple match. This was war. He ran toward the transport elevators that carried him and other soldiers to the surface, ready to defend the city and its people. Above him, in the royal palace, Lyra was already gathering her guards. She did not leave the palace, though every advisor begged her to seek safety. She was not a princess who would hide while her people were in danger. I will not run, she said, her voice firm. If Ryan stands, I will stand with him. Kyle bowed low, knowing there was no arguing with her. Very well, Your Highness. When Ryan stepped onto the streets, the sight was terrifying. Zarth machines moved like towering giants, their limbs made of shining metal, their eyes glowing red. They fired energy beams that tore through the streets, reducing buildings to rubble in moments. Civilians screamed and fled, while smaller military units tried desperately to resist. Ryan shouted orders, guiding people to safety. This way. Move toward the transport corridors. Keep calm. Despite the chaos, his movements were precise. He leaped into battle, dodging blasts, striking at the joints of the machines with bare fists. Every punch and kick was carefully placed. Though the machines were strong and unyielding, Ryan's agility and knowledge of their weak points allowed him to turn the tide. even in small ways. Above the battlefield, Lyra watched from a raised platform. Her guards were ready, but she could not stand aside. She raised her hands, letting her psychic light shimmer across the streets, shielding civilians and allies from the worst of the Zarth weapons. When one of the machines swung a massive arm toward Ryan, she focused all her energy, creating a glowing shield that deflected it. Sparks flew, metal twisted, and Ryan moved through the opening, striking the machine's joint with a precise blow. Together, human and Lyrian fought side by side, a combination of raw courage and alien power. The city had never seen such a sight. Hours passed, yet the Zarth machines continued to advance. Many soldiers had fallen and buildings were gone, but the spirit of the defenders did not break. Ryan moved like a storm through the machines, his bare fists finding every weak point. Lyra's light flashed across the battlefield, keeping him protected when the machine's strikes came too close. They became a symbol. Wherever Ryan struck, the machines faltered. Wherever Lyra's light shone, civilians and soldiers survived. Others rallied behind them, inspired by the courage of one human and one Lyrian princess. Soon, hundreds of defenders joined the fight, their morale soaring. Ryan noticed her watching him across the chaos. He shouted above the noise, "Stay behind me!" She shook her head, her silver eyes fierce. "If you stand, I stand." It was not defiance, but unity. Side by side, they pushed back the invaders, turning fear into hope. As night fell, the battlefield glowed with fire and sparks. Ryan's arms were bruised, blood mixed with ash on his skin, yet his movements never slowed. Lyra's energy flickered, yet her light remained strong. Together, they cleared a path through the machine, saving thousands of civilians in the process. When the last Zarth machine in the city fell, the streets were silent. Smoke rose into the sky, and the distant stars seemed to shine brighter after the darkness. The defenders were exhausted, yet they were alive. Ryan fell to his knees, breathing heavily, his fists shaking from the effort. Lyra ran to him, placing her hand on his shoulder. "You did it," she said softly. "You saved them all." Ryan shook his head, smiling faintly. "We did it," he said. "You were with me every step." Lyra's heart swelled. In that moment, she realized that the human she had admired for his courage was more than just a warrior. He was a leader, not because he commanded armies, but because he inspired hope. She knelt beside him. "I have never seen anyone fight with such spirit," she said. "Not my people, not the greatest warriors of the galaxy. Never anyone like you." Ryan looked at her, brushing ash from his sleeve. "It's not about fighting alone," he said. "It's about fighting for what matters. And today, it was about protecting you too." Her silver eyes softened, her voice barely above a whisper. "I want you to be mine." He looked at her, the chaos of battle fading into the night. He did not misunderstand. She did not speak of possession. She spoke of understanding, of connection. He smiled, and for the first time in the war, he allowed himself to feel hope, not just for survival, but for something more. The aftermath of the battle left Lyra Prime in ruins, yet the spirit of its people was unbroken. News of the human and the Lyrian princess fighting together spread across the galaxy. Ships from distant systems broadcasted the story. A single human had led the defense that saved thousands. Ryan refused medals, refused titles. "I only did what was right," he said simply. Lyra, now more aware of her own feelings, stood quietly beside him. She knew the galaxy would call him a hero, but she saw more than that. She saw a man whose heart burned with courage, whose will could move mountains, a human whose strength was beyond flesh. And Ryan, looking at her, knew that this bond, born of trust, bravery, and mutual respect, was something neither war nor time could destroy. For both of them, the battle had become more than survival. It was the beginning of a connection that would shape the future of two worlds. As the stars glittered above, the princess whispered once more, almost to herself, "He fights for hope, and now for all that is dear to me." And Ryan, tired but unbroken, smiled quietly to the night. The galaxy had seen his strength, but only she had seen his heart. The city of Lyra Prime was quiet once more. Fires burned low in the ruins, but the people were safe. The sky glimmered with stars as if celebrating the victory, and the air carried the scent of hope. The Zarth Empire had been pushed back, at least for now, leaving the galaxy stunned at what a single human, alongside a Lyrian princess, had achieved. Captain Ryan Holt walked through the streets with slow, steady steps. His arms were bruised and sore, his uniform torn, but his face carried the same calm determination that had inspired so many. Civilians waved at him, tears in their eyes. Soldiers saluted him, their faces full of respect. Yet Ryan remained humble. He didn't fight for praise, medals, or titles. He fought because it was right. Princess Lyra moved quietly beside him, her silver eyes softening as she watched him. In the chaos of battle, she had seen a human spirit unlike any other, fearless, determined, compassionate. And now in the quiet aftermath, she saw the man behind the hero. "Ryan," she said softly, stepping closer. "You have changed everything, not just here but across the galaxy." He turned, brushing ash from his sleeve. "We changed it together," he said, his voice gentle. "I couldn't have done this alone. You were with me every step." Lyra smiled, a mixture of pride and relief in her gaze. "I wanted to stand with you. I wanted to see the heart of a human, and I have." Ryan nodded slowly, his eyes reflecting the starlight. "Then I hope it was worth seeing." "It was," she whispered. More than words can say. For a long moment, they simply looked at each other. There was no need for grand words or promises. The bond they shared, forged in the fires of battle, was stronger than anything else. Across the galaxy, news of the human who had led the defense of Lyra Prime spread like wildfire. Traders on distant planets whispered his name. Scholars wrote of him in their histories. Children looked up at the stars and dreamed of bravery like his. Ryan became more than a soldier. He became a symbol. A reminder that courage, spirit, and determination could stand against even the most powerful enemies. And yet he remained unchanged. He did not seek fame. He only sought to protect, to inspire, and to survive for the sake of others. Lyra watched him from the palace balcony as the citizens celebrated below. She thought about the first time she had seen him fight barehanded in the arena of worlds. How still he had been, how calm, and how completely he had captured her attention, her curiosity, and eventually her heart. She stepped closer to him. "Ryan," she said softly, "will you stay? With me, with Lyra, with our people." Ryan looked at her, the weight of countless battles behind his calm eyes. "I don't belong to a kingdom, princess," he said. "I belong wherever I am needed." Lyra placed her hand on his arm. "Then stay where you are most needed. Here, with me. Not as a soldier, not as a hero, but as a man whose heart has changed mine." Ryan's lips curved into a small smile. He had fought countless enemies, faced endless dangers, yet this moment, this quiet, simple moment, felt like a victory unlike any other. "Then I will stay," he said. The days that followed were full of rebuilding. The city of Lyra Prime rose from its ruins, stronger and brighter than before. The citizens honored Ryan not with statues or trophies, but with stories of courage, of hope, of the human who refused to bow before fear. Ryan worked quietly alongside them, helping to rebuild homes and streets. Wherever he walked, people greeted him with smiles and gratitude. He didn't act like a hero. He acted like one who simply did what was right. Lyra, watching him, often joined him in the streets. She would help carry supplies, organize shelters, or simply walk beside him, speaking of the future they could build together. The bond between human and Lyrian princess became a symbol, not just of love, but of unity and hope across worlds. One evening, as the twin moons of Lyra rose in the sky, Ryan and Lyra stood on a balcony overlooking the city. The air was cool, the stars glittering, and for the first time since the battles began, there was peace. "You know," Ryan said quietly, "I never expected any of this. I never imagined a human like me could change the fate of a planet." Lyra turned to him, her silver eyes shining. "You did more than change the planet. You changed hearts, mine included." Ryan looked at her and laughed softly. "I only did what I had to do. You saw something in me I didn't even know existed." She smiled, stepping closer. "And I will never forget it. You fought for life, for hope, and for what is right. That is what makes you extraordinary." Ryan Holt. For a long moment they stood in silence, gazing at the city below, the stars above, and the vastness of the universe around them. News of their victory reached distant star systems. Leaders from multiple worlds sent messages of congratulations. Allies who had once doubted humans now asked for partnerships. The galaxy began to see humanity differently, not as a fragile species, but as one with courage, heart, and unbroken will. Ryan's story became legend. Soldiers recounted his battles. Children drew pictures of him in their classrooms, and scholars wrote about the human who fought bare-handed against impossible odds. Yet Ryan himself never sought the title. He remained humble, focusing on helping those who needed him most. Lyra stood beside him during the ceremonies and celebrations. She did not need words to show her feelings. Her presence, her gaze, and her quiet support said more than any speech could. And Ryan, understanding her heart as she had understood his, felt a warmth he had not known for a long time. A sense of belonging, not to a planet or a crown, but to a connection that was stronger than any battlefield. Months passed and the city flourished. The bond between humans and Lyrians grew stronger, not just because of a single battle, but because of the courage, trust, and hope shared between one human and one princess. One evening, as Ryan trained in the arena, Lyra approached him with a small smile. "You know," she said softly, "you inspire more than warriors. You inspire hearts, even mine." Ryan paused, wiping sweat from his brow. "I only do what I can. The rest is up to the people who believe in each other." Lyra took his hand gently. "Then believe in me, Ryan Holt, as I believe in you." He looked into her silver eyes, seeing sincerity, admiration, and a kind of love that had grown through courage and shared struggle. He squeezed her hand gently. "I believe in you, Lyra, more than I have ever believed in anything." In the quiet of the night, as Lyra Prime slept under a canopy of stars, the princess whispered one final time softly, as if the universe itself could hear her. She saw the human fight bare-handed and whispered, "I want him to be mine." Not as a prize, but as the light that changed her world. Ryan stood beside her, looking up at the same stars. For him, the galaxy had always been full of challenges and dangers. But in that moment, he realized that the greatest strength was not in battles fought or enemies defeated. It was in the heart. And humanity, fragile and unarmed as it might seem, had a heart strong enough to change worlds. The stars above twinkled as if applauding. Legends of the human would be told for generations. And Lyra, the Lyrian princess who had witnessed his courage firsthand, would carry in her heart the memory of one man who fought not for glory but for life, hope, and the courage to stand unbroken. The galaxy would never forget Captain Ryan Holt, the human who had fought bare-handed, who had saved thousands, and who had taught a princess and the stars themselves what true courage looked like. And somewhere, far beyond the twinkling lights of Lyra Prime, humans everywhere would look at the stars and know that their kind had made its mark, not through weapons, not through fear, but through heart.